Hello, my name's Javier Hernandez, and welcome back to Los Comics TV. So, here we go. New episode. No, these are not small paperback comic books. These are real books. Yes, folks, today we're going to be looking at the James Bond novels by Ian Fleming. Yeah, those who know me have known me for years. Have heard me speak about it for sure, of how much of a big influence the Ian Fleming James Bond novels have been on me as a writer and a creative person. And of course, you know, big fan of this stuff. So we're going to be looking at a particular collection of paperbacks. I got the whole run here. There's 14 books total. And these are printed by Signet Paperbacks, Signet Books, published by the New American Library. And these all go back to the 1960s, these printings. The Bond novel started in 53 with the publication of the first Bond story, Casino Royale, which I think plenty of you have probably seen the recent movie. How recent is it, right? But came out in 2005, I think. So it's like, what is it? 15, 20, 16 years old now? Wow. And we're still waiting. We're waiting 2 years now almost for the fifth and last Daniel Craig film, No Time to Die. We'll see if it comes out this November. But anyway, here we're mostly going to be talking about the books. There's plenty to talk about here. So I'm going to set these aside for a second because I want to show you. This is the fifth book in the series, but this is the first one I ever read. So this is way back in high school. Would have been, I guess, probably about 81. I'm guessing 82. 1982. Whittier High School, here in the city of Whittier. Those of you who don't know anything about Whittier High School, if you've seen the Back to the Future movie, the first one from, was it, when did that come out? 85? I guess 85, 86, something like that. They filmed the high school scenes there at my high school because I guess, right, Marty McFly goes back in time to the 50s, runs into his dad, if I remember. Anyway, so the dad is, his high school they're using is Whittier High School because Whittier High School was built, I think, back in the 30s or 40s. But anyway, I remember when the film came out, we were all excited, like, hey, they filmed it at our school. Although I don't remember while I was at school, because I left there in 84, high school, graduated. I don't remember hearing about the filming, unless they filmed it right after we left, like during the summer, and then Back to the Future came out in 85. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. Anyway, one day in the Whittier High School library, beautiful library, this huge cavernous library, real Art Deco. I haven't been there in decades, but one day I was looking for some books to read, right? You know, like, I guess I had plenty of comics in the house, but I was just looking for something to read, and I remember they had a couple of spinner racks in the library, the old-fashioned metal ones, like the ones in the comic shops, but for paperback novels, you know, filled with paperback novels of all types. You know, I'm sure they had Frankenstein, Dracula, 2001, you know, everything. And I would just spin the rack, and it'd creak, you know, that creaky metal sound. And I don't remember if there was there must have been other Bond books there, but anyway, this one's, you know, comes into focus here on the spinner rack right in front of me. Ian Fleming, the James Bond thriller, From Russia with Love, and it was this is that exact one because you know, I bought this later. I returned the library's copy when I was done reading it, and this is actually a pretty sharp copy, but it was this edition, you know, and yeah. I had heard of James Bond because by 83, when I read this, 82, 83, yeah, I was aware of For Your Eyes Only, the movie that came out in 81. I remember buying the Marvel comic adaptation of it. I think Howard Chaykin drew it, yeah. But I didn't see the movie because that summer, I believe, I went to Mexico with a friend of mine. Him and his mom, they invited me. All right. Asked my mom, hey, can I go with my friend in Mexico? So, okay, go ahead, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, another tangent. But so I didn't see For Your Eyes Only, or any of the summer of 81 movies, Indiana Jones. What else did I miss? Probably a Star Wars movie. But so I picked up the comic, and then I remember as a kid growing up seeing the James Bond movies on Sunday, ABC Sunday night. They would show them. So I remember catching a few. Live and Let Die stands out to me for some reason. And then years later, when I was watching The Spy Who Loved Me on videotape, when I started collecting the Bond movies, I had a flashback during a particular scene I remember watching this movie on the big screen here at the local Whittier Theater. Again, back in the day, we had this huge movie palace, just one screen. That's how they were in the old days. So I do remember seeing The Spy Who Loved Me in the movies. But anyway, I wasn't really a Bond fan. Just something I just saw. It's like watching a Dracula movie that comes up every year, or Tarzan. So the plot intrigued me. There's a whole bunch of books. Turn it on the back. And then just the write-up here. James Bond becomes a target of the Russian murder organization SMERSH. The deadly and sinister SMERSH sets a trap to catch and kill James Bond, an ace British spy with a weakness for women and wine, and they bait it with the beautiful brunette. But they don't count on her falling in love with her victim after she has seduced him. For incredible suspense, unexpected thrills, extraordinary danger, read Ian Fleming. Anyway, I was pretty much hooked. So I just rented it. And it was really interesting reading this, as a teenager, a high school teenager. I remember reading it in the backyard at the house. And just being engrossed in it. And then, years later, thinking back on this, like, this book was written in it came out in 57. Originally written by Fleming in 57, at the very height of the Cold War, right? Russia versus the West. Tensions were always high, and all this, Europe, the big battleground as far as political and secret agent type stuff. But being really engrossed with it, and I was reflecting on it, like, here I was, this teenage Mexican-American kid, high school kid, just being sucked away into this story of this British agent in the mid-50s taking on this diabolical Russian murder organization, SMERSH, which was a real organization, I understand. But I think it got disbanded by World War II, after World War II. But Fleming, a writer with a fancy for great names, thought he'd just resurrect SMERSH as like the most brutal execution branch of the Soviet intelligence apparatus. Anyway, so I got this one, I read it, and then I think I either checked out more books from the library, but I do remember going uptown Whittier. We used to have like a whole bank of used bookstores back in that golden age of the 80s. There was about three or four used bookstores and one new bookstore. So I remember I used to go buy, I bought all these up. I figured, well, I just want to keep these. Already being a comic collector, it's like, well, if I can get these pretty cheap, and they were cheap back then. So what I'm going to do is, I got the whole stack here. Just really quick, I'm not going to review each book. That'll take us forever. But I don't remember if I read them in order either, because back then there was no internet to look anything up. And I think if you look at the back of these, I think they always change the order. Yeah, see, like they list all the books available, but they're not in order. They keep changing, it looks like, or change a little bit here and there. So anyway, that was no help. So I just basically just got what I thought was all the books and just read them all. Pretty quickly, too. So Casino Royale is the first book. And like I said, if you've seen the film, you kind of have an idea of the plot. They changed a lot of it, but the whole basic thing of, Bond's first... I'm going to say his first girlfriend, because he had, he was already an adult and he had other relationships before he got into the service. But the first great Bond woman, I guess. And the whole gambling thing, Casino, trying to clean the villain out of his money and all that. So that's the first book. And then, so a lot of you are fans of the films. You're going to see all these titles. This has nothing. Actually, this is the second book. These got mixed up. But yeah, you got to think of the film. Again, they all vary in relationship to being based on the book. Live and Let Die, again, they kept some very vague elements as far as like the voodoo elements and coming over to New York and the Bahamas, and but a lot of the stuff is invented for the films. But yeah, classic book, Mr. Big. Right, look, Assignment Danger. He's Mr. Big, the most powerful criminal in the world, head of the Black Widow voodoo cult, high-ranking member of the Soviet murder organization SMERSH. His base of operations stretches from Harlem to the West Indies. His henchmen are terror and fear. He must be destroyed. Only one man can do it, and that man is you, James Bond. So, oh, right here. See this book stamp on here? Book, buy, sell, trade. Rodden's Bookshop. 500 East Broadway, Long Beach. Yeah, I bought a lot of these that I'm going to be looking through today at this used bookstore. I remember probably going there very extensively. Yeah, once I became a big Bond fan in 82. Yeah, in the mid-80s, I just would go crazy, going to bookstores, and then, all the way down to Long Beach and other places, and just scouring the old book sections for not just the Fleming books, but even different versions, right? There's different publishers that have put them out. So you get different cover art, hardcovers, and then there'd be books on Fleming and such. So, yeah, a lot of digging through. But boy, that whole downtown area here has been remodeled. So none of those bookstores are still there, unfortunately. The third book here, Moonraker. Nothing to do with the film as far as there's no outer space, no space station, no space shuttles. They weren't even invented back then. But this was a fun book, too. This ex-German, Fleming always had it out for the Russians and the Germans. This ex-German soldier from the war, World War II, he created this new identity. And then he starts rising in British society, mysterious Sir Hugo Drax. And he discovered some rare metal, and he ends up offering to build England a super rocket, right, to compete with the U.S. and the Soviet arms race. So, yeah, I think the Queen even knights him. And so they're going to test this rocket called the Moon Raker. It's an intercontinental rocket. But unbeknownst to anybody, the Russians have given him a nuclear bomb, and he puts it on top of the missile. So what everybody thinks is just a missile shot, a practice shot, he's actually shooting a missile out, and it's supposed to come back right down and blow up England, or at least the capital. Pretty wild plot. I mean, really crazy stuff back then, real apocalyptic. So yeah, that's Moonraker. But yeah, they used the title when they made the film because they figured Star Wars was a huge hit now in the late 70s. Does Fleming have a space-sounding title? So Moonraker is a perfect title. It's a great title for a rocket, too, though, Moonraker. The fourth book, Diamonds Are Forever. It involves diamond smuggling from South Africa to the Las Vegas headquarters of the... he tangles with the Spangled Mob in this book, which the mob did not make it into the film. The only thing the film kept was the title, the diamond smuggling plot, the South Africa location, and then the Las Vegas location. But what I love about these books, I mean, yeah, obviously I love the stories. Like it's a cool agent, right? Like, well, you've seen the movie, right? This cool guy trying to thwart the forces of evil, and he has all these escapades throughout the mission with various women he encounters, both good and bad. As far as, working for the bad guy or just innocently caught up or something. Of course, the villains are dastardly and twisted and evil. But it's really Fleming's writing. Because, I'm not going to say I became a huge spy novel fan. I mean, there's a lot of very great spy writers. I read one or two. One by, was it Len Dighton? Maybe not. The Ipcris File. And a couple of others, just here and there. But it wasn't so much the spy. It was just the right concoction of the character. This type of character where it's a real flamboyant, almost comic book style. They're larger than life. The villains are larger than life. The women. It's a combination of that and then the writer. It's just his writing. It just has a certain nice, beautiful poetry to it. Some of it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. The descriptions are great. He's known for his extremely there's real poetic descriptions of the landscape, the food he's eating, the drinks, whatever. but it's they're serious, but there's also like a certain tongue-in-cheek aspect to it, which you know, anyway, so it's very engrossing. In the fifth book, of course, you know, From Russia with Love, Dr. No came out in 59. By now it's not, what year? I just want to give you an idea. So he put out one book a year. 58. Yeah, so he started in 53, and then, you know, one book a year gets us to Dr. No here for what, the seventh book? Seventh book. No, sixth, I'm sorry. This one's, the movie's pretty close to this. In fact, this was the first movie, right? This came out in 58, I said. Let's talk about short-term memory. Yeah, 58. So by the time this book came out, believe it or not, CBS television in 1954, I believe, a year after the book Casino Royale came out, they did a 1 hour, I believe it was a live. They had this live mystery series, which is pretty bizarre, amazing. And they filmed, that was a 1 hour episode, 1 hour film adaptation of Casino Royale. You may be able to find it on YouTube, but it starred an American, Barry Nelson, as James Bond. So yeah, he literally just became an American agent. Pretty trippy. So early on, right out the gate, Fleming had interest from producers and such. So, you know, this came out in, what did I say, 59, 58. But and the film a few years after, then there was a big film deal where Harry Saltzman and Albert Broccoli bought the rights for all the existing books, and for whatever reason they decided to make Dr. No the first film, and the movie follows this pretty close, which is nice. Let me set these over here. Okay, so the next book in 59 was Goldfinger, which you've seen the film, and it follows it pretty close for the most part. You know, Fleming's outrageous. Although in the book it's different. In the movie, Goldfinger wants to set off a nuke inside Fort Knox, which would, I would think it would melt down all the gold, but they say it'll, you know, make it useless, right, for so many years because it'd be radioactive and such, which would cause the U.S. economy to crash and probably bring on the whole Western economy. And of course, Goldfinger in the movie, he was being backed by the Chinese, right? The Chinese government gave him a nuke, which is a crazy idea. It's like, wow, did the U.S. go after them after the movie? You know, in the movie. In the book, it's even more outrageous. Goldfinger, he actually wants to rob Fort Knox. He's got, yes, kind of like in the movie, knocks out everybody at Fort Knox in the city, right, with gas, whatever, and he has all these other gangsters to help him out, and they got all these trucks, and he thinks he's going to be able to, you know, while everybody's knocked out, before anyone contacts the outside world, load up those, I don't know how many 18-wheelers and burgle, how many, you know, $20 billion or so of gold, which is such a crazy story, you know? Just to give you the idea of the type of stories he's writing, Fleming. You know, like I said, they fluctuate between, they're espionage because it's a British agent, you know, trying to protect British interest, Western interest, whatever. But, I mean, you know, some guy trying to steal all the gold in Fort. It's so beautifully outrageous. Again, the border on comic book ridiculousness. Some of them. And some of them are just more way down to earth, traditional spy thrillers. But the characters are so fanciful, it kind of raises it up from just being a flat, straight spy thriller. Anyway, it's a neat combo. This book's interesting for your eyes only. This is a collection, so there's 5 James Bond thrillers. So Fleming wrote these 5 short stories for this book. So 5 secret exploits of James Bond. Let me tell you the titles really quick, because you'll recognize these as some movie titles. From a View to a Kill, For Your Eyes Only, Quantum of Solace, right? That's interesting. Risiko and the Hildebrand Rarity. Some of these stories, I think 4 of them, were written by Fleming in the late 50s because CBS, who did the Casino Royale TV movie, they were interested in doing like an actual James Bond TV series. And so he, you know, Fleming was, it's interesting about Fleming, like he kind of bounced back and forth. He would sit there and, you know, take time to write scripts for the TV show. And of course the deal never came through. So, you know, like any writer, like, well, I got these unused scripts in my drawer. May as well polish them up, whatever, and then publish them as, in a book form. And then I think one of the stories I think was a news story. So yeah, this is a good year because in '59 the Bond fans, they get a new book and they got 5 Bond stories in there. So pretty cool. And then so let's see, the next year, make sure I got this in order. 1961, is that right? I believe so. Yeah. Thunderball, which turned out to be one of the biggest grossing Bond movies of all time. It was the 4th movie. But anyway, this book, this got an interesting, sordid history. Again, I told you Fleming was, being courted by various producers, Hollywood and such. At one point, he was approached by this producer, young producer at the time, Kevin McClory. And McClory wanted to do a Bond movie with Fleming. And again, by this time, Fleming had not sold the rights to Harry Saltzman and Cubby Broccoli. So he started banging out a script with Kevin McClory and some other writer. They worked together on a screenplay called, I believe it was called Thunderball, or it might have been Warhead. Anyway, whatever happened, the 3 of them worked on it, bounced ideas around, and then the project fell through and nothing came out of it, right? So what happens? A couple of years later, Fleming's, oh, well, okay, that didn't go anywhere. Let me take that script and polish it up as a full novel. And that's what this is. This is a novel called Thunderball. The problem is, he published this book, and guess what? He got sued, right? Because the book comes out, and then the producer, McClory, and the other writer, Whittingham, they're like, wait a minute, why did he write a book? Why did he, release a book based on our joint screenplay? So that caused a huge problem for Fleming, where he got, he had to go to court, and they ended up in court for a few years. And in the end, Fleming got the rights to, keep the Thunderball storyline, but he had to, let me see if it's in here. Oh, wow, you know what? I may have a little rarity, because I believe the later printings after the court, 62, this 4th printing. Yeah, every other printing, like after the court trial, it has a little disclaimer here based on a story created by Ian Fleming, Jack Whittingham, and Kevin McClory. I didn't realize I had an earlier copy. So, anyway, that's the story behind Thunderball. But, it's a legit Fleming story, where Spectre, this is the first time Spectre appeared, the terrorist organization, kidnap, hijack 2 atomic bombs and hold the world to ransom. So anyway, Thunderball has a pretty crazy, heavy backstory. The next book, The Spy Who Loved Me, is another very interesting, it's an anomaly in the series. Probably recognize the title. Oop, this book is ripped. Again, these books are almost 60 years old, these actual copies. This is an interesting story in the, meaning the story of the book, because this is all done in first person. It's from the point of view of this woman, Vivian Michelle. It's her point of view, right? The whole first, 80% of the book is just her backstory in England as a young girl and a woman, young woman, and then she comes to the States to, I guess, a new life, whatever. And somehow she gets a job as, managing a hotel, and it's one of those hotels that closes down for the winter or whatever. So basically, just kind of like in The Shining, hey, just sit here and watch the hotel for the winter season. Do some low-level maintenance, whatever. And she's there one night, and it's raining, and these 2 thugs show up at the place. Because I guess the guy who owned the hotel, if I remember the plot, he wanted to burn it down to get the insurance money. He didn't care that that woman was there, so these 2 thugs are pretty much going to kill her and then burn the place down. So guess what? They're about to attack her, and then the doorbell rings, and they all stop. And it's this, turns out, opens the door, and it's this, middle-aged, a guy, a British guy. He was just traveling through. Turns out it's Bond. He was up in Canada on a mission, and he literally, to stop for the night. He stops at the hotel. Anyway, she lets him in. The thugs are trying to act like, you know, they're not there to do anything bad, and she kind of gives him a signal. Eventually, he finds out she's being held there, and yeah, he kills the guys and takes off. And then, you know, she just writes this book, how she met this guy James Bond one night. So the funny thing is, Fleming put a disclaimer at the beginning, which no one, you know, it's obviously a joke, but to my dear readers, I found what follows lying on my desk one morning. As you will see, it appears to be the first-person story of a young woman, evidently beautiful and not unskilled in the arts of love. According to her story, she appears to have been involved, both perilously and romantically, with the same James Bond whose Secret Service exploits I myself had written from time to time. With the manuscript was a note signed Vivian Michel, assuring me that what she had written was purest truth and from the depths of her heart. I was very much interested in this view of James Bond through the wrong end of the telescope, so to speak. Anyway, so yeah, this is, you know, this woman really met James Bond. So it's like I said, it's an anomaly of the series. It got a very mixed reaction, obviously, from the fans, the readers, and Fleming was like real disillusioned. So he requested that if they ever made a movie out of this or anything, to never use anything inside the book other than the title, which they did, right, years later. In fact, they were doing that. They did that with a lot of the books, but so that's the story of the spy who loved me. What else do we got? We got a few more, wrapping them up here. Let's see, on Her Majesty's Secret Service. This one, yeah, this was one of the best films that came out of this one. This is the one where Bond gets married, falls in love and gets married with Teresa, right? Or Tracy. So, very cool book. And Blofeld, the head of Spectre from this book, who escaped, you know, he escapes at the end of this book. He's up and running here in disguise as somebody who's got a new identity. And then, you know, Bond tracks him down. And then this is, here we go. Getting to the very last one almost. You Only Live Twice. It's one of the darker books. Bond goes to Japan on a very sensitive mission. You know, his wife's been was killed at the end of this book. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie by now. But Blofeld kills his wife. He gets married at the very end, and he's probably married like for 6 hours, and now he's a widower. This book starts off, Bond's in terrible shape, right? Because his wife died. He's been drinking too much. He's like going to hell. He's going to hell in a handbasket, which reminds me of some of the Daniel Craig films. There's one or two films where he's like in really bad shape. Skyfall, I think it was. So M sends him on this mission to Japan, like a diplomatic mission, you know, to try to like make amends for everything he's been lousing up the last year. And while he's there, he finds out there's this foreigner, Dr. Guntram Shatterhand, literally buys a castle in Japan off an island, and kind of sets up a suicide garden where, you know, he has all these deadly plants and scorpions inside the walls of the castle. And I guess back then, just really touchy subject, but very high suicide rate, right, in Japan. For whatever reasons, every country's got their own reasons. But so Fleming catches that. He's like, okay, well, people are sneaking into the castle, like sometimes couples, so they can commit suicide with the poison plant or something, which delights Dr. Shatterhand, because by this point it's you find out it's Blofeld. He's completely mad, so he's got this, you know, Disneyland of death. And in Bond, while on his mission in Japan, finds out about this Guntram Shatterhand, but then he sees a photograph of him and realizes, oh my God, that's Blofeld. So kind of snaps out of his daze and goes there and has his final showdown with Ernst Stavro Blofeld, the head of Spectre. And this was Fleming's last full book, because this came out in '64, I believe, which is when Fleming died. Yeah. So what happened is Fleming dies. This book comes out. The following year, 1965, the Bond films. There's already been 4 that have come out. They're making millions at the box office. So Fleming had written the rough draft, the early manuscript for this book, The Man with the Golden Gun. So the publisher's like, well, you know, it's just about done. So they got another writer to polish it up. and it's James Bond takes on the man with the golden gun. He's a assassin, a KGB assassin, a Cuban. This Cuban hitman who's working for the KGB throughout the Caribbean, Francisco Scaramanga, and he literally has a golden, I think it was it's a revolver. So yeah, the book came out. It was very popular because, again, by that time, Bond is box office gold. Everyone's buying Bond books and toys and, everything they can get their hands on. It's like, oh, a new Fleming book. I like the book. It's a little light though, right? Because it's a manuscript, and then it's finished up as a novel by another writer, a good writer, but it doesn't have, obviously Fleming couldn't didn't have, he was passed away, so he couldn't, bulk it up with all the Flemingisms, I guess you call it. But so that was the last book published by Fleming, Man with the Golden Gun. But however, in '66, 2 years after he passed away, a brand new book comes out, Octopussy, by Ian Fleming, The Last Great Adventures of James Bond 007. So what these are there's 3 short stories. They're written by Fleming. They're definitely, top notch. Written some years previously. 2 of them are written for Playboy. He had a great relationship with the Playboy in the '60s, obviously. They'd cover the books. Hugh Hefner was a huge Bond fan, and it really, the Playboy audience totally overlapped with the Bond audience at that point. So Fleming had written a couple of short stories exclusively for Playboy, and then he wrote another one, The Living Daylights, was for some other magazine called Argosy. So what happened was the publisher like, hey, you know what? There's these 3 stories floating around. Let's put them together in a hardcover and call it, and what title shall we use? Yeah, I think Octopussy is the one that really stands out, right? So, and this is the paperback version of that. So when they say there's 14 James Bond novels, right? There's 13 written by, 13 full ones written by him. And then the 14th one, another collection posthumously. But yeah, so these are the 14 James Bond novels your mother warned you about. And I think that's basic. I just want to give you guys just a rundown of these. Again, what really influences me with these, I do a comic book called El Muerto, right? It's this, nothing James Bond about El Muerto. But as a, as a teenager, just reading all these in one big gulp, you really get influenced by the writing style, or how should I say it? No, I don't want to say the writing style. I admired it, but it didn't influence my writing as far as I know. I don't write like Fleming. I write and draw. So, but just the way maybe the way structures the stories and such, and like writing very memorable villains, and giving a lot of try to put just a lot of emotional. I don't know how to put it. A good emotional sweep through the story. One thing that really impressed me by these, I love these paperbacks, these Signet Paperbacks. These are my favorite, probably my favorite edition of the various ones that have been done over the decades. Very much, I always love these backs, right? Just they have the same format. They got the really exaggerated plot, and then they list the books and the author photograph and a little bio. Like I did that with one of my comics, Les Voodoo Sans. Is this couple. Supernatural voodoo. Actually, this is based on the artwork for the Live and Let Die movie poster. So there's a Bond influence right there. If you guys look at this and just remember or look up Live and Let Die, you'll see the resemblance. I drew this, I penciled it. My friend Rafael Navarro, he just went over and painted it. So that's why it has his look, but it also has, my composition. But look at the back. I'd always wanted to do like a back cover. Hopefully it's coming on the camera all the way through. I know it might get cut off top or bottom. I always liked this format. James Bond, the plot. So Les Voodoo Sans. Here's the quick summary. Right here what does it say here? For incredible suspense, unexpected thrills, extraordinary danger, read Ian Fleming. For fantastic adventures featuring haunted heroes and heroic monsters, read Javier Hernandez. And then right here, other Los Comics titles, and I put a bunch of titles of my other comics I've done. and then a little black and white author photograph, little summary, and then published by the New American Library, cover printed in USA, published by Los Comics, printed in USA, copyright Javier Hernandez. So anyway, that's one of the more obvious like visual influences from at least this version of the Fleming paperbacks. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. Been wanting to do a Bond. I'll be doing more Bond spotlight videos, you know, over the years on this channel. Because like I said in the beginning, the channel is going to be about my comics, my work, and of course things that influenced me, things that made a big impression on me, and you know, even to this day. And maybe I'll review some of the other books. There was other authors now have written Bond novels. It's been about 4 or 5. And then one author, John Gardner, in the 80s and 90s, he wrote 14, I think. As many as Fleming, which is crazy. And yeah, I read those off the rack as they came out. That was a really fun time, because it'd be like a new Bond novel. Like, okay, I can read new James Bond books in my lifetime right off the rack. Anyway, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Something different. But of course, we all have a lot of interest, so no doubt some of you are Bond fans or just curious about this history of this the books. And of course, hopefully it'll attract some new viewers, right? People looking up Ian Fleming novels will check out my video. Hopefully they'll check out the other stuff. But everybody, you know, thank you so much. Please like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, if you're a first timer. And feel free to share the video, right? If, you know, you're a Bond fan and you want to share this with other Bond fans through your social networks, let them know that we're talking Ian Fleming James Bond here on Los Comics TV. So thank you. Until next time.